All right, no intro or anything today. We are getting right into it because I'm on TikTok. TikTok is actually my number one platform that I post on, followed swiftly by YouTube. But I just have an easier time on TikTok. A lot of disabled people do actually, because it's easier to do these little pieces of bite-sized content and kind of piggyback off of, something someone else said with like a stitch or a duet than it is to sit here filming like a half-hour long video. And that is, what YouTube wants. YouTube prefers when you push out a longer video to a shorter one. I still love creating videos on YouTube. I will always create content here. YouTube is my other home away from home, but TikTok is my number one. And what happened the other day was traumatic. Some people are rolling their eyes when people say that they felt a sense of trauma with what was done to Americans on TikTok, but it was traumatic, and I want to explain to you everything that happened from start to finish, because I know not all of you are on the platform, and I know not everyone fully grasps the gravity of what happened and the fact that it is a trickle-down effect. They do not want to stop at TikTok. They are looking at basically any platform or any company that has any ownership in China. They are looking at any platform that is not fully or at least half owned by an American company, and they are targeting it. They've made that very clear. They've actually said as much. So don't think for one second that just because you don't create content on TikTok, or you never had a TikTok, or you don't think it's that big a deal because you hate TikTok, that they're not going to come for you next, because they absolutely will. So let's look at the history first of TikTok bans in America. The government constantly edges us with this. Like, that is nothing new whatsoever. Basically, every single year, the US government is like, "Whoa, we're gonna ban TikTok. We're taking your beloved platform, your dance app away from you." And it's reached a point where it's basically at meme status on the internet. Like, even people who aren't on TikTok, even people who are not American, just make a mockery of the US government for doing this every single year. They're like, yeah, you always say that you're going to ban the app in America and you never do. Just stop already. We know that you're never going to do it. And each time they made that threat, some people, took some extra precautions. They'd like back up their data or something, or they'd remind people where to find them on other platforms. But on the whole, no one really took it that seriously, because the government never took it that seriously. They would just sit there arguing with each other for hours on the House and Senate floor like they always do, and then they would go home and nothing ever happened. So some months ago, a package was introduced to Congress. And I'm going to do a little bit of education for people who watch my content who are not from the United States, because I know our government can be really confusing and weird. Basically, the president is not the law of the land. The president is not just like the owner of America who can do whatever they want whenever they want. Congress has some sway, a lot more than the president, and the Supreme Court overrules everybody. That's how things like Roe v. Wade were overturned, where you saw everyone upset here because no more abortion. It's because the Supreme Court overrules the president. The president can say, no, I'd rather you didn't do that, because then he kind of veers into dictatorship territory, and he has to be very, very careful about that for obvious reasons. So there's basically Supreme Court at the tippy top, then you've got Congress, and then you've got the president underneath that, and then like common folk of America, basically. So Congress has a lot of branches that can get very confusing very quickly. Right now, for the TikTok ban, you just need to understand the House and the Senate. You don't need to worry about like the legislative, judicial, executive branches. We're just going to talk about the House and the Senate. So someone comes up with a bill or a package of bills. Sometimes there's like 10 or so of them in one package, and you have to pass everything unanimously, otherwise it doesn't go through. And you introduce it to the House votes on it. If it doesn't go through, it dies in the House. That bill is not going to go any further. It's donezo. If the House does pass that bill and they're like, yeah, we think this is a good idea, it goes on to the Senate. The Senate goes through the same thing the House did. They explain what the bill is. Everyone who's a senator gets a chance to speak their mind and tell the room why they think it's a good idea or why they think it's a bad idea. Then they vote on it. And if it goes through and they're like, we thought this was a good idea, it goes to the president's desk. The president reads over it. He determines based on, a number of factors if he's going to sign it into law or not. And if he signs it, it is the law of the land. There is now nothing anyone can do at the moment about this law. It simply is a thing that exists here. So hopefully that's broken down enough that it makes sense. I know, like I said, American politics are very confusing even for Americans. So I'm doing my best to kind of give you the tidbits so that you can have some semblance of understanding. Basically, what happened was a lot of senators and representatives are the ones from the House, they had an issue with TikTok. For the longest time, they kept on flip-flopping on what their actual issue even was with TikTok. No one can seem to come to a general consensus. For some of them, they just didn't like the fact that basically we were able to circulate information and talk shit about them really quickly. That was, honestly, we all know that's the real problem here. They don't like the fact that we can talk shit about them, we can organize easily, we can create protests, we can create boycotts, and we can enact great change on TikTok because of the way the algorithm works. So the algorithm is so damn good on TikTok that I can post this video here on YouTube today, and it might only get 35 views in a week, because it's just the way the algorithm works here. I can repost it on TikTok and it can get 35,000 views in a week. You gain more traction on TikTok than you do on YouTube, generally speaking. Not every single individual, but generally speaking, because of the algorithm. And they didn't like that. They didn't like the fact that we were able to finally organize and kind of take steps to take our country back because it was becoming an oligarchy. And we didn't agree with that. They then realized that that wasn't flying with some of the representatives and Senate members who were on our side and were like, no, like, this is America. Last we checked, there's something called the Bill of Rights that basically says you're allowed to do whatever the hell you want in this country so long as you're not hurting someone else or violating their rights as a result of what you're doing. Leave them the hell alone. And they were like, crap, this isn't working out. It dies every time we try to pass it. We need a new strategy. So they tried to claim, oh, it's owned by China because ByteDance is headquartered in China, which means that the Chinese government is using TikTok as a means to spy on American citizens and steal their data. Which immediately after we all heard that was fucking laughable. Because, have you heard of a little place called Meta? Have you heard of a dude who may or may not have ever heard of the concept of a soul called Mark Zuckerberg? And the fact that I did my own independent study on this, because you guys know by now, on my platforms, I try my best to listen to both sides of an argument. I want to hear both sides so that I can gather all the relevant information and come up with my own conclusion on whose side I am taking on a particular matter. I don't care how attached I am to a platform. I don't care how well I'm doing on it. If I deem it to be dangerous to myself or other people, I will gladly offload that app. I will stop using it entirely, and I will let people know that it is a danger. So I was like, okay, bet. You're saying this. I want to hear your argument on that. Because if that was true, yeah, that's a problem. But like I said, I did my own independent study, and if they're worried about TikTok stealing our data and using it for some nefarious reason in China, you gotta get rid of Meta, because Meta is right here. And let's see, let me pull up my statistics I found here. I counted up every single lawsuit that I could find published so far from the day Facebook began to today. Every lawsuit involving Meta. From what I saw, and again, there could be more than this. This is just what I found published. There were 67 lawsuits that I found. 28 of those lawsuits dealt with data leaks or flat out discrimination. Yikes. And the discrimination suits were maybe like 4 or so. So basically 40, a little over 40% of all Meta lawsuits have had to deal with some kind of data leakage. In some cases, very few. In some cases, it was a complete accident. That happens, unfortunately, on basically every platform. If you exist online, your data has been accidentally leaked at some point because of hackers and stuff. It unfortunately happens. It comes with the territory of having a platform online. However, a vast majority of the cases were Zuck just fully handing over our private information to companies. We all know about that. We knew about the fact that he hands over to different companies. It doesn't end there, though. A lot of people on TikTok, and this is when like Zuck really started freaking out, found out that if you use Facebook Messenger and you have it on your phone, and you're not one of those people like me who religiously like swipes off of anything you're not currently using because I don't like that it sucks my battery out. If you just have it sitting there idle in the background, Meta is able to utilize your microphone. They're able to utilize your camera without your knowledge. They are listening in on everything you're doing. They are tapping into any Wi-Fi you decide to use with that device. And they're using that to gather information about you. Some of these lawsuits Meta has been a part of were Meta actually giving away your private chat messages. Your private messages have been just handed over to companies where some schmo is sitting at an office desk right now reading every word that you've said to everyone in your Facebook contacts that you have ever sent a message to. And if that doesn't frighten you, I don't know what will. A vast majority of the lawsuits against Meta were him just fully handing over your data. And it's not just to companies. I know some people are like, whatever. Like, every social media platform does that to some capacity. I'm used to it. It's not a big deal. He also sold countries' information, like their citizens' information, to rival countries. He's had basically like the governments of certain countries sue him because of the fact that he just handed over their citizens' data to a country that is dangerous to them. Raising more alarm bells yet? It should be. So people on TikTok were basically saying, well, if you're going to play this game with TikTok, you have to play it with Meta too. And of course they didn't want to, because if you look at readily accessible information, a ton of senators and a ton of House representatives have bought a shit ton of stock in Meta. Very recently, in fact. Especially once this bill to ban TikTok in America was introduced. It really went crazy then with them buying Meta stock. And unfortunately, even the senators and representatives who claim to be working on behalf of the American people, who were standing up for us and our right to exist on TikTok, they bought Meta stock too. People like Ro Khanna, who were up at all hours of the night, even on the day that TikTok went fully dark in America, to ensure that we'd be back online the next day, to try and make sure that we had access to our freedom of information, our freedom of speech, our freedom to assemble, our freedom of the press. He even bought a ton of stock in Meta very recently. And it's sad because that tells you even the ones who claim to be fighting on our behalf care more about money than American citizens. How are we supposed to see that any other way? Because at the end of the day, yes, you may have been standing up there fighting for our rights and trying to make sure we didn't lose an important platform for a lot of American citizens, but you also bought that stock because even in the best case scenario, you knew that if TikTok went dark, there was a strong possibility Meta would now be the king. It would be the largest platform of any kind, or business, for social media of any kind. So you were going to make a shit ton of money off of it because people were going to automatically upload stuff to Reels. That's messed up. And we can find the information. We know this stuff. We are not idiots. I feel honestly insulted by my government that they thought we would buy into any of this stuff in the first place. I think everyone should feel insulted, and I'm upset with the U.S. government and with TikTok because, okay, so getting back, I went on kind of a ramble. Getting back to like the history of bans of TikTok in the US. So, like I said, some months ago, a package was introduced. Now, this package was one of those where you can't just say, I want this bill and I want this bill. I want to pick this on that out, but I don't want other stuff. It was an all or none package. You had to vote unanimously for or against it, or nothing was getting passed. And disgustingly enough, in the same package that the TikTok ban in America was introduced, was a package to send aid to Ukraine to try to help them combat what Russia was doing to them. So even the congressmen who are fighting for our rights and saying that we deserve the right to exist on whatever social media app we want here, their hands were tied. They were like, if I say no and let them keep TikTok, Ukraine doesn't get any help, and Russia just wipes them off the face of the planet. And if we say yes, Ukraine does get help, but then the American citizens hate us because we banned TikTok, what do we do? Their hands were tied. It was sick. It was evil. It had literally nothing to do with anything else in that package whatsoever. They just knew it was a guaranteed win for people who wanted to get rid of TikTok that way. So that went through, and people were hoping Biden wouldn't sign it. The reason they thought Biden may not sign it is because of the fact that Biden and Harris did a lot for their campaign trail on TikTok. They've done a lot to try to gain any semblance of positive outlook on his shit stain of a presidency by being on TikTok. So why would they want to get rid of an app that helps them with any semblance of popularity with the American people? But he signed it. He said, screw TikTok, screw your freedom of speech, your freedom to assemble, your freedom of the press, all that, screw it. It's out the window now, bye. And for the longest time, there was no set date that this was happening. We knew it was happening, we weren't told when. Then they all recently voted, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, we were given less than a week to prepare for it to go fully dark in America. They were like, you have until January 19th, right at midnight, TikTok will go dark in America. It will no longer exist. It will cease all operations. It won't be on the App Store. Your VPN won't work. There were, sorry, my cat just shook my camera. There were some rumors that if you even attempted to use a VPN to bypass this ban, you would incur a huge fine or even go to jail. That's messed up. That's very messed up, because clearly that's the most important pressing issue in America right now, people getting on a dance app. Now, I tried looking into that myself, and I saw a lot of conflicting information. To this day, I am not 100% sure, honestly, whether or not there would have been a penalty for using a VPN. All I know is that when people did try to use a VPN, it did not work. I attempted it as well. Nothing worked. Even if you could get a VPN to believe you were in another country, trying to set up a new account on TikTok just was not working for whatever reason. It would just stall out. So they had something in place to track us and figure out where we actually were. So we were all scrambling, and we need to talk a minute about a cool little psychology term here. Well, YouTube beat this section with a yeet stick really quickly. I thought it might be fun during a very serious video and a very difficult time in American politics to have a little bit of levity, but no, copyright won't allow that. This section was just Avenue Q singing the song Schadenfreude. I'm sure some of you have figured that out already on your own. But yeah, it was going to take away my ability to monetize this video. And if I'm doing this level of emotional labor for a video, damn it, I am monetizing it. So sorry about the muted section here. If you've never heard of that term before, it's basically a sense of joy or pride in someone else's suffering. You see someone you don't like going through something bad, and even though you know you shouldn't, you feel this little twinge of joy about it. There was a lot of that going on TikTok as soon as people realized that there was a timeline on Americans existing on the app, and it really sucked. People did not understand why this was so important. And that's why I wanted to explain this on a platform other than TikTok. I saw people on Blue Sky, on YouTube, on Reels, even on non-American TikTok all going, you guys are being so dramatic. Why are you crying over just losing an app? It's not a big deal. You lost Vine and stuff before. You lost Musical.ly. You'll get over it. You'll find somewhere else. You're going to be fine. Like, just chill out. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal. Any violation of human rights should always be considered a big deal. And this was a violation of multiple rights. Yes, when senators were trying to stand up for us, they were bringing up freedom of speech, but I've already illustrated in this video a couple different times, it was more than just freedom of speech. It was freedom of speech because it is one of the strongest places that we get our voices heard. So many marginalized groups who have been silenced for generations in the United States finally were given their voice back because TikTok exists and the algorithm works the way that it does. Native Americans, who people just didn't even know where to find half the time, were given their voice back. They were able to educate people. They were able to explain what's happening on reservations and how to help. They were able to get some parcels of land back finally. Not much, but it's better than nothing. Any step forward is a good step. People who are Roma were able to educate people on the fact that the G word, that's a slur, and that a lot of what we've seen in Hollywood, even if it was done with good intentions, is incredibly offensive and a racial stereotype. I learned that this word is a slur and has been used to harm the Inuit community for a long time because of TikTok. It is very educational, and again, those groups of people were able to get a voice back. People who are neurodivergent and would try to discuss being neurodivergent on other social media platforms only to face ridicule, people claiming that they weren't really neurodivergent and they were just hopping on some trend, people saying horrible things to people on YouTube when they announced that they were neurodivergent. We were able to actually find a community on TikTok of people who were similar to us or who were allies of us, who accepted us as we were, loved us as we were, made us feel welcome someplace, made us feel like we could discuss aspects of neurodivergency that are really difficult without being judged. We were able to talk about the aspects of it that are hard because of the way that other people in holistic society deal with us. That yes, we understand it's our job to try to, get along in the world and everything, but you could at least try to understand us sometimes, and you don't. The disabled community was able to gain a strong voice on TikTok and organize and get some kind of mutual aid and GoFundMe's out there for people who are struggling because guess what? Doesn't matter what country you're in, society is not built for disabled people. It is not accessible. Even places that claim to be accessible 9 times out of 10 really aren't. They think that having a ramp someplace automatically means that they're an accessible business. That's not the only accessibility that matters, and sometimes that ramp still doesn't matter if I can't fit through your door as a wheelchair user. We were able to educate people. We were able to get help and have some sway and get things done. Freedom to assemble was violated by threatening to ban TikTok in America. Yes, we can still technically protest without TikTok. We can still boycott without TikTok. However, it was much more successful as a result of TikTok's algorithm. 9 times out of 10, if there was a protest for something very dear to my heart, I did not find out until it was already being live streamed, and by then it was like too late. It's an absolute circus trying to get to that protest. And it was frustrating. I was like, I want to be able to help, but I can't because I don't even know when these things are going on right now. But on TikTok, it was like, boom, one person says at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, we're all meeting at blah, blah, blah. This is happening. Look at what just happened with the People's March. 24 hours pretty much before it happened, Ben & Jerry's was like, bitches, let's go. And the bitches went. Like, it was that fucking fast. Look at the boycotts and how successful they've been on TikTok versus other platforms. That it took a few people mentioning, hey, you might want to stop with getting Starbucks and you might want to stop with getting Nestle because here's the list of fucked up shit they're doing. Here's all of the different brands that are supporting Israel and hurting Palestine. And within a week, their stocks plummeted. Yes, people were already talking about that on places like YouTube. Yes, people were boycotting and, refusing to utilize these services, but it didn't hurt nearly as much as when people on TikTok banded together for it because of the algorithm. The algorithm is unlike anything else on another social media platform. Freedom of the press was being violated. There have always been independent journalists online, whether it's back on the blogger days or Substack or people on YouTube like Phil DeFranco. They've always existed. But again, TikTok really gave a whole lot more of them a voice that hadn't been heard before. If they'd been on YouTube for a decade and only got 6,000 views per video, on TikTok they were getting 6 million views per video. Independent journalists on TikTok are so well respected that when this whole ban was introduced, they were invited to the White House to speak with President Biden about potentially keeping it, about him potentially giving us an extension so we didn't lose all the freedoms that app afford us. That's how well respected they are. They have been allowed in spaces that most random US citizens are not allowed in because they're so well respected and because they're doing such good work. And their voice will be taken away if TikTok completely goes dark forever in the United States. Because yes, I follow them to other platforms, I follow them to Substack, I follow them to Blue Sky, I follow them to YouTube. They simply do not pull the same numbers because the algorithm is simply not the same. It's not as good. They're not seen as much, they're not heard as much. They can't get the same level of work done on another platform that they can on TikTok, and that is important. That is a violation of their rights as independent journalists in America. So now we come to the jobs. And this gets gross when it comes to any platform. Again, I was seeing people who are on TikTok who are not American, as well as Americans who don't use TikTok on other platforms, saying this. We were given less than a week for people who earned their living on TikTok to scramble to figure out what the hell they were going to do. It was such a short amount of time. Even the senators and the representatives who agreed to the TikTok ban were like, oops, we didn't know it would happen that fast. Oh no, backpedal, what have we done? What did you think was gonna happen? So there's numerous ways people were earning a living on TikTok. For one thing, TikTok became popular during quarantine. There were some loans in place for small businesses. However, you had to fit a lot of criteria to get that loan at all. A vast majority of small businesses either had to shut their doors or scramble to find some means of keeping them open because they weren't able to get those loans from the government. My wife and my small business included in that. So people went to TikTok. They used it to advertise their website or whatever platform they were selling on at the time. And it worked. Again, because of the way the algorithm works, people found them elsewhere. And it saved their business from shutting its doors in the middle of COVID quarantine. That's amazing. Then TikTok Shop came along. Between how easy it is to advertise on TikTok and having access to the TikTok Shop and the convenience of being able to buy something as you're scrolling through an app instead of going, oh shit, now I have to go to their website. Oh shit, now I have to find it on Amazon. Oh shit. It's so easy that way. This saved countless small businesses in America. Not to mention the fact that a lot of them that were startups were like, I need the TikTok algorithm to tell people that I started a small business, that I exist. I mean, a couple days before, my cat is going absolutely apeshit right now. What are you doing? Anyway, a couple days before it went dark on the evening of the 18th, I saw a girl on my FYP who was like, I just sank my life savings into creating a video game. I was counting on TikTok's algorithm to inform people that I had a game launching. Now that it's going away, I don't know what I'm going to do. I basically destroyed my life. Because if people on other platforms don't end up seeing this and don't know it exists, my life savings is gone and I have nothing to show for it. So you've got the advertising that saves small businesses. You have TikTok Shop and the people who only had their business on TikTok Shop because it can be that lucrative on that platform. Suddenly gone. You had people who are paid to create content who, are on TikTok's Creator Fund, who had that suddenly ripped away from them. And it was their only form of income because they're not large enough on YouTube to be paid well enough to support themselves yet. You had people losing sponsorships because the sponsors were panicking and pulling out last minute because they were like, well, if the platform's gone, what's the point in sponsoring these people? So that was just rescinded. And the sadly forgotten group, the TikTok employees of America. I think someone said there's some like 15,000 people employed by TikTok in America. They were made to go to the office like it was any other work day, knowing it was their last day on the job. There were people crying on camera saying there are 4 serious respiratory illnesses going through the United States, plus bird flu right now, and I'm about to lose my health insurance and I don't know what to do. That's horrible. So that many jobs, I think there was a little over 7 million jobs were at risk as a result of this. And this is anecdotal. This isn't an actual statistic. Don't take it as one. But from my own personal experience, people I know who have lost their jobs since post-COVID, it's taken them an average of 2 years to find a new job. And that's if they were able to find time to plan, to have some kind of money set aside for when they lost this job. These guys didn't get that. They got like less than a week and then, so long, sucker, have a nice life. That's what they got. It was just awful. And the fact that there were people laughing about this, making a complete mockery of it, saying things like, well, oh no, now you're gonna have to go out and get a real adult job. If you're earning a paycheck, it's a job, kids. If you're paying taxes to the US government as a result of income you are earning in any capacity, that's a job. It doesn't matter what your personal feelings are on it, it's still a job. End of story. I don't understand it. And then people laughing and making fun of people who were crying on their final live streams as it was going dark and saying that everyone's being so dramatic and stuff. That sucked too, because like it wasn't dramatic. They were explaining that there are I'm trying to not get emotional, but there's so many of us who are like disabled and stuff that we don't have a third space. We can't just go out to the pub on Friday night after work or something. That's not a possibility for us. And we were losing our community. We were losing the people that keep us happy, that keep us going during the worst moments of our lives. We were losing connection to people in other countries that we really care about and that we've cultivated friendships with. And it was scary. It just wasn't working very well on other platforms because those platforms, they already existed. They already had their own communities set up. And it wasn't the most welcoming evening, I'll tell you that much. It sucked. And then, of course, you had the non-Americans for the like 12 hours or whatever that we had gone dark on TikTok, laughing and being like, oh, it's such a better place without Americans. And I'm so grateful to some of the people who are not American, especially in the UK. The UK really came through for us. Canada and Australia were fucking abysmal in their behavior toward Americans when we weren't there to defend ourselves. First off, if you have some kind of personal beef with the inhabitants of a certain country, have the guts to come out and say that while that group is there to defend themselves. Don't kick while we're down. Don't say it when we can't say anything back to you. Actually have some courage and say it to our face. And then there's the weird, it's a one-sided beef, guys. It's a one-sided beef with Canada and Australia. We do not hate you. We think you're pretty cool. We like you a lot. We like your culture. We like your country. We like the way it looks. We like your music. We like so much about you. And then you just create this one-sided beef with us. And most of the time, the stuff that you're beefing about isn't even true. It's like this weird stereotype that you got off of television that barely any Americans fit the bill of. And it's so frustrating. And I love the people that were defending us and being like, you guys are being really shitty. Like, this isn't funny. This isn't okay. This is awful. There were even a couple of them that got really emotional and were saying things like, every time something terrible happens in another country, every time, like, rights are violated in the UK or something bad happens to trans people in Australia or something, the Americans are the first ones to get on this app and defend you and give you a source of community and give you some kind of crowdfunding to make sure that you are safe as can be. But as soon as the same thing happens to them, you're making fun of them for it. You're saying it's a good thing that they're gone. Like, how shitty do you have to be to behave that way? That was just sad. And then, of course, as soon as we got back on the platform, they're all mass deleting their videos and acting like it never happened. We saw you. We're not stupid. We knew what was going on. And we wouldn't do that to you, so just sit with that, you know? Sit with the guilt. Sit with the fact that some of you got your accounts banned because you were going a little too far with your xenophobia there. It is still xenophobic, even if it's America. There are countless minorities who live in this country, and you're shitting on us as well. Yuck. Not a good look. Now, there's one more thing I want to explain about this that is still scary. It was scary when we went dark, and it still is scary now, involving what happened with TikTok. It's the fact that the U.S. government and TikTok are both not being transparent with us. We do not understand what's going on. First off, when we went dark, we were not informed what would happen to our accounts whatsoever. We weren't told if our accounts would just be exactly as they are right now. People could still interact with our content. People could still follow us in case we ever came back, and it would be fine. We weren't told if it would be a free-for-all and people could just steal our content and hack into it. We weren't told if it would get Thanos snapped, and if, you know, someone decided to sign an executive order saying TikTok is allowed to come back, we would have to rebuild from the ground up. We didn't know shit. And that was a nasty thing to do on TikTok's behalf and on behalf of the United States government. And we got some weird ass stickers. So as things were slowly starting to go dark, this is what all of us saw on our screens as we began trying to scroll through the app. That's already very ominous. They didn't explain anything else. Even on their own social media platforms, they weren't explaining anything. Then all of a sudden, we wake up in the morning, and this is what I saw. First, I was able to access my account. I was able to see all of my content and stuff. I was able to see my notifications, but that was it. If I tried to post something, it automatically went to my drafts, but then I was able to scroll through my mutuals page, my following page, but I couldn't go to the FYP. And we were like, what the fuck? About an hour passes, and we get this ticket on our FYP. What? No explanation whatsoever. And no one has said anything else since then. Nobody knows what's going on. We just know Trump posted to Truth Social that he's planning on having 50% of TikTok owned by America, and suddenly TikTok is seemingly on board with this when they weren't before. And that affects everyone, regardless of what country you're from. If 50% of TikTok is owned by the US, whoever that ends up being, it will impact you, whether you like it or not. I don't like the fact that they're not being transparent with us. We deserve to know who's going to own the app. We deserve to know whether this is a 90-day temporary stay and in a couple months we're going dark again. We don't know that. We don't know if it's the 270-day stay and we get like almost a year and then we're going dark after that. We don't know if we permanently have TikTok back forever and it can never go away again. We have no fucking idea what's happening and no one is telling us. And I hate that. I personally have signed off of my Meta apps for at least a week. I'm trying to determine what I want to do about Meta because I don't like the fact that Meta is this huge monopoly that owns a shit ton of stuff on the internet. I don't like that. I don't like that they're in the US government's pocket. I don't like that they're in Trump's pocket. I don't want anything owned by Musk because I don't like that he has so much sway in the US government and on Donald Trump's presidency. And I don't know who's going to own TikTok now, at least 50% of it. But I know it can't be good if Trump's that jazzed about it. And what sucks is there's not much left beyond that. Yes, there are a lot of independent social media apps that are trying to be developed. Most of them will not be ready to launch until at least spring. So for now, we all have to decide what we want to do. And I want to leave you with something really important because it's becoming an absolute free-for-all on the internet right now as a result of people's feelings. If someone decides it is too difficult for them to get rid of their Meta apps because they have memorial pages on those apps, because they have a lot of history on those apps, and it is represented more than just a numbers game to them, leave them the fuck alone. Everyone is going to make their own choice because, we have freedom of choice for their own reasons. You may not understand those reasons. You may not understand why they want anything to do with Meta after everything that Zuckerberg has done. It's none of your business. Leave them alone. If someone decides that they still want to post on TikTok despite all this weird, shady shit that's going on the platform right now, leave them the fuck alone. You don't know what their reasons for existing on TikTok are. Like I said, it may be their only source of income right now. We're experiencing unprecedented weather, cold the likes of which many people have not seen in years. If this is how they're going to heat their home, leave them the fuck alone. If people decide to swear off everything and only exist on YouTube or only on Blue Sky, that's fine. Leave them the fuck alone. You don't have to agree with people remaining on a certain platform, but you can also just leave those people alone and not bully them for it. There's 1,000,001 reasons you may not understand for someone existing someplace that you don't want to exist. That's the beauty of freedom of choice. Don't assume, ask questions. Assumptions cause so much strife across the world that doesn't need to exist. Things are hard right now. Don't make it worse. That's pretty much all I got right now, though. I will still be on TikTok. I really had to make a big decision. I didn't post anything at all yesterday. I was really thinking about what I wanted to do. I'm personally staying on the app because it is the largest community I've ever been able to build on any social media platform in my life. And I'm able, as a result, to help a lot more people on that app than I am on other apps. I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about what's happening there. I'm still able to criticize it heavily. But it's important that I continue the work that I'm doing there to me and to others in my sphere. I will also still be here on YouTube. I don't know what I'm doing with Meta, but if you follow me on Blue Sky, that's where I'm going to be updating things like that and letting you guys know what I'm doing. And I'll probably make like a community post here or something about it. But until next time, thanks for staying with me through this long video. Do something that makes you happy today, so long as you're not infringing on someone else's human rights. And I'll see all of you again in the next one.